It's another ta-da moment. This is yet another project. Apologies, I got a bit sidetracked while I was collecting bits for another car, and I found this. It was going to be broken up because of that there damage. It's a 1995 GSI 420 Tourer, so it's got 2-litre T-Series engine in it. It's got the snazzy sports trim. It's done 109,000 miles, but actually it's a really decent little car. The previous owner had modified it a bit. It had 60mm lowering springs, which now it's back on standard ride height stuff. It's got the BRM alloys because they need to go over 280mm discs. Got a big front brake conversion kit. Engine wise it's standard. It was wearing the Rover Sport front bumper and Mark 1 bonnet and the Mark 1 3-prong grille. I think it's a sport grille, but all of that has gone. I've been given standard stuff to go back on there, and obviously I need to source myself a new bonnet, but the damage is all below above the frontal crash structures. So the front bumper support beam and crash cans have gone, but the actual frame and the chassis rails is fine. What happened was he got caught out approaching a roundabout. The car ahead of him was an SUV or something quite tall. A foreign driver entered the roundabout, caused the car ahead of him to lock up or like stop. He couldn't stop in time, went into the back of it. So hence we've got that relatively low speed damage, but the best thing is it's unrecorded damage. So he was going to break this car up, which would have been a shame because it's actually quite a nice little car. So instead I bought it for not a lot of money. Got some of the panels already, still need to get the bonnet and I think a headlight or two, and then I shall be putting it back together. It's actually already got MOT and it has been on the road recently, so it should be quite a quick turnaround project, and then I'll just set it on, I think. Yeah, very brief introduction. This incidentally is the first time I've ever seen the car in daylight. It arrived last night on an A-frame. I bought it completely unseen, but I have to say, for what I paid, I'm extremely happy with it. It looks great. Here's a closer look under the front. You can see what the impact has done. It's tweaked the front panel, the slam panel, backwards, bending where the bonnet latch clips on. If you look at it from sort of this angle, the front upright right at the wing hasn't moved either side. It's tweaked that one rearward slightly and buckled it, but the actual vertical part is fine. That is not a bolt-on part. To swap it you have to drill out the spot welds and then re-weld another one on. It's also just twisted the side panel, or the radiator backwards. Radiator's knackered, but I think I might have a spare one anyway. So really I need the bonnet, I need that panel and a pair of headlights, front bumper and the hockey puck things that go in here. So I'll add those to my shopping list. Been doing a bit of spring cleaning, just picking the worst of the leaves off the scuttle. Then I took the headlights and the indicators out just to have a further look at the damage. So that there running through is the longitudinal chassis rail. That is the bumper carrier, which has got a tiny tweak in it, but otherwise that's all fine. That hasn't moved. That is obviously creased and pushed backwards, which has buckled or rotated that part in, but actually that will rotate out quite easily. Radiator's knackered, that's knackered, centre part is knackered. Over here, as I said earlier, we've got that crease there. Chassis rail's fine, bumper carrier's fine, but there's been some kind of engagement here that's pushed that whole panel back and round and twisted it slightly off that front beam. That front lower beam is perfectly straight and actually hasn't got any rust in it. In fact, I haven't found any rust in the front of the car whatsoever, which is nice. So what I'm going to do is, before I make an assessment as to whether I'm going to chop the whole of the front off and weld a new front on, or maybe just the top bit, I'm going to take that bracket out and then see if any of that wants to spring back, because ideally what I want to do is pull as much of this out before I do any choppage, because I can use it as a lever to pull against where it's been pushed backwards. So I'm going to take that clamp off and just see what happens. Well, I've undone that and it did move slightly, and then I thought, well, why don't I just try pulling it by hand? And already you can see how much it's moved. And I'm not saying that that is going to be job done and that's how my method of repair is going to be achieved, because I'm still probably going to change this top panel, this top rail, because I don't fancy trying to beat that out and make it look nice and smooth. It'll always look shit with hammer dents, or you'll have to put filler in it and it'll just generally look rubbish. But the benefit of having it in there and pulling it is, I'm not sure I can film that one-handed, but it's actually starting to straighten up in here. Yeah. So I'm confident the top rail will pull out somewhere normal. I'm going to have to go and get a pair of grips or a bar or something and try and pull this whole area forwards and out. I also have these two 6mm threads, so I can bolt something on here and then pull using that as well. I might need to take the battery out and the radiator out and tap it somewhere straight with a hammer as well, but we'll have a play and see how it goes. Well, I still haven't picked up a hand tool or a hammer or done anything other than pull with my hands, and already, I don't know whether you can see, that just pulled forward really simply, and that's, you know, not a million miles off. This front panel is clearly got a kink in it there, but all of the underlying structure just pulled straight out. So when you look at it, it really isn't bad at all. So I'm going to keep playing. I'm going to go and get my hammer and just see if I can dress some of this, not really to do a finished job, but just to make sure stuff is getting straightened, and then I'll have some confidence where bits and pieces go. I'll pull the radiator out and drain the coolant as well, because the radiator's had it, and also there's a rather suspect looking coolant pipe back there, so while the coolant's out, I'll pull that off, make sure that hasn't got any rust holes in it, paint it up and then put it back on. Look, an action shot. That's coolant leaking out, or not leaking, draining. It's mostly fresh in there at the moment because it had to get topped up just to get it mobile. Yeah, that's coming out. Radiator should come out now that I've bent that panel out the way. Whip that off, whip the coolant pipes off. They're actually quite a pain because initially I was just going to pull that one off, but then this one, which goes from the thermostat housing towards the heater, it has its partner here as well, which is part of this one, and they both look really crappy back there, so I'm gonna have to dig around to pull those out because there's no point just doing one of them. Got to do both really. Here's the radiator, obviously rather second hand now. The coolant fan on the back seems to have survived. The heat shield's cracked, but that's not a big deal. I have in my stash of spares this radiator, which I know is for either a 200 or a 400, but I don't actually know which model. Came in a generic box. It was in amongst a load of spares that came with the bubble car, but actually it's exactly the same size. The only difference is it has these brackets on it for carrying fans and things, and I think it's basically a universal part to fit lots of different models. So I'm going to see if I can get the rad fan on that, and then whether it'll go in the car okay. And then on the side of the original we have the two coolant temperature sensors, or I don't know whether they switch the fan on or not, but this actually has the holes and bracketry for taking those. So I'm going to try and whip them out, drill the holes and see if they'll seal, and then in which case hopefully I've saved myself some money, got a good rad. Right, these are the sensors, whatever they are. They're just held in with these plastic clips, sit through a rubber grommet in the tank on the side of the rad. This one was actually plugged into something, whereas this one wasn't. They both have markings on the underside, but they're a few digits out. They both say 9688, and I guess that's the temperature range. in degrees, but I don't 100% know. So before I bother going and drilling holes in my nice new radiator, I'm going to go do some internet research and work out which of these two I actually need. If in doubt, I could fit both and then just swap the wiring over when I need to get the thing running, but if I only have to drill one hole in my tank, then that suits me because there's less to leak. And since there was only ever one wired up in my car, it doesn't make sense to drill 2 holes. Back to the car, just to look around the wiring. That's the wiring that went to one of those temp sensors. I can't see anything else down here that could plug into that, so I'm going to go, as I say, and have a Google and see what I can turn up. Well, that's taken quite a long time, and it's just access issues really, and crappy Jubilee clips. But I've got those metal pipes off. They're actually pretty good. There was no evidence any of them was actually leaking, but they just looked a bit crusty, and there's no point, you know, stripping down the front of the car that much, getting the radiator out and not fixing stuff like that, because it will just come back to bite either me in the arse later or whoever buys the car off me. So anything obvious like that I'm going to do. The other weird thing is there's no like obvious method for securing the battery. I don't know whether it would have had a clamp over the whole top of the battery or whether there should be one of those that just holds the foot. I'll have to investigate that. Yeah, I'm going to probably just, I don't know, fiddle about a bit more with the car, probably clean out the interior and just have a good poke around. Well, I've cleaned out the inside of the car. Not really much to report. No like wads of £50 notes, bundles of ganja, whatever. Nothing particularly interesting. Phone holder, which I might scavenge. Seats are really nice. That front seat for the passenger is mint. Centre armrest has a tiny nick in it there, which is a bit of a shame. Otherwise really good. Driver's bolster, meh, kind of as would it be expected. That's a bit of a shame to have that nick in it. The rest of it can probably be treated. That might be able to be leather filled and polished up and look okay. Steering wheel, gear knob, gear gate is already nice. Got a Pioneer stereo, which that's pretty cool to have. Electric front windows, all the door cards are lovely. Then in the back, manual window winders. Rear headrests, which is quite cool. A nice little armrest there. I have to say, I've never had a 400 and I've never had an R8, and I'm dead impressed with what it's like in here. It's like quite nice and airy. Nice sporty seats with the half leather, half sort of Recaro checked stuff that you would get in the 800 Vitesses. I haven't found any rust anywhere on this car other than this wing, but it's a bolt-on panel, so that doesn't really bother me. And anyway, I kind of want to swap it because at some point this car had a body kit on, and you can see where the overspray from priming was. So actually, I'll be on the lookout for a metallic green front wing. I've also found out that the bumper I've got is for a early Mark 1, because I think Simon, who had the car before me, was going to do it up as a Mark 1 again. So it doesn't have the big grille on the front, it just has the little Generation 1 Mark 1 front end on. So I'm going to look out for a GSI touring front bumper, try and make it sort of back to original. I'm going to keep the Cosmos full 16-inch alloys because I think they look cool. And on that note, I've just found there's another one in the boot, so I've actually got 5 of those, which is pretty cool. And yeah, again, it's a really nicely finished little car. How do you work that? Oh yeah, you lift that up and it springs up, so there must be a spring in there somewhere, which is nice, and then it all just concertinas out of the way. So you've got a really big, sensible boot. So as much as I said I was going to serve this thing on once I fixed it, this should be ideal for work for me, depending on what it's like for fuel, but I could put all my tools and that in the back and then trundle around, and I won't be burning crap loads of diesel like I am in that Beamer. In the front of the car, I was left a present. Genuine 420 GSI boot badge, because I'm currently missing that. And then Simon, previous owner, had got these custom made up. They're to replace the centre badges. They're Rover emblems but in green to try and match the bodywork instead of the MG badges, so they can go on. Those wheels incidentally are really nice. There's very little curbing on those whatsoever. They just need damn good clean because they're covered in brake dust. So all in all, really happy with this car. I will need to have a good poke in here because I noticed that was loose. There's no actual rust, but I need to clean all the crap out of that and seat it all back in. Can't see any chips in the windscreen. Needs a damn good clean inside and out. An engine bay valet. There's no point doing any of that until the front's sorted, so I'm going to call it a day for today. But yeah, watch this space and I will keep trucking along with this one. Just before I forget, I found in the glove box the original Rover handbooks with the radio code and everything, and all for this car, not just transferred from another one. And it's got service history, Rover and MG, Rover and MG, Rover, Rover MG, Purbeck, Trinity Motors, all the way up to 52,000, so about half of its life. And then I've got tax discs, a whole bundle full of those there. And in the house, Simon yesterday gave me a whole wodge more of paperwork as well. So I've actually got loads of paperwork for this car, which is, although it's probably never going to be a collector's car, it's all really nice to have. So yeah, chuffed with that.